Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Advocacy Talks for March. This month, we're celebrating International Women's Day for 2022. The theme this year for International Women's Day is break the bias, building a world that is more diverse, inclusive, and equitable for people. This month, we have three wonderful women who have a vision impairment to come and talk about their lives living with a vision impairment as a woman in today's world. So welcome to Sarah McGowan, Jade McCormick, and Mina Fitzpatrick. First of all, we're going to hear from Sarah McGowan, and Sarah's coming in from way across the world. So Sarah, over to you.
Hello, my name is Sarah McGowan. I'm 21 years old. I am currently in Kingston, Ontario in Canada because I study law and political science in Trinity College Dublin, and I'm on exchange for a semester over here in Queen's University in Canada. I'm from Waterford originally, and I moved to Dublin 2 years ago for college. My eye condition is Leber's congenital amaurosis. I don't have an accurate percentage of how much I can see or not, because that very much varies between light. Like, so if I'm in very bright light, I have like markedly reduced vision. And if I'm in, say, artificial light or darker settings, I have a lot more vision. So I'm also completely colorblind. So I pretty much see in the grayscale, and that's about it. I am a guide dog user. So over here, I also have my guide dog Mossy with me, who is a gorgeous red, beautiful golden retriever, and who's my best friend. And I got him when I was in 5th year in secondary school, so I was about 17 and a half when I got Mossy, and we have been great friends ever since. So I suppose living with a visual impairment in today's society, for me, growing up, I was the youngest of 4 sisters. And my mother would always say she didn't want me to be seen as different or be treated differently to anybody else. If everybody else has to wash the dishes, I have to wash the dishes. If everybody else has to do their household chores, whatever, so did I. And also, if everybody else did activities or the positive things like outings or things, I could do those too. So all my family were big into Irish dancing, and so all through my childhood and my teenage years, I did Irish dancing, and I was basically not treated any differently to my sisters. So in terms of socializing and things growing up, it wasn't majorly impactful in terms of the Irish dancing community, and everybody were so accommodating and kind of so normal about it. But then I found, contrasted that to the education system, say, there was a huge contrast, and you would really see the difference in terms of the education system, in terms of the provision of services and having to advocate and kind of fight against the system all the time for the provision of services. Say, like, when I was in first class, my mother had to fight to get me, say, a visiting teacher for my region. When I was in secondary school, I had to go to the department to keep my SNA, and say reasonable accommodations and different things. It's just been all through the education system, it's just one thing after another after another. I think those services really need improvement and basically need attention, in terms of when you contrast that to how in my home life my visual impairment, just to the point where, like, my sisters or my friends would say they forget that I have visual impairment half the time, because it's that normal. And then you contrast that to, say, when you're dealing with um, the systems and bureaucracy, say, in Ireland, it's such a contrast. Um, in terms of my college, now that I've moved, so I moved when I was in sixth year, trying to decide what I wanted to do. I had no idea. I filled in my CAO application the day of the closing date. But I always knew I wanted to travel and I wanted to move away because I loved traveling. So when I was younger, we used to go to conferences. So my condition wasn't researched in Ireland, so we used to go to conferences in America. And then with the dancing, we used to travel around all different places. And say I went with the IHCPT to Lourdes when I was 11, and I did work experience away. So I just basically always knew I wanted to travel different places. So I was like, I want to go to college somewhere else. So I wanted to kind of move out of Waterford and go to college in Dublin or Cork or somewhere. So I decided to go to Trinity, and I decided I would do law and political science. And moving up to Dublin, I found that I was lucky in terms of I had two sisters who were in different colleges in Dublin. One was in DCU and the other is in Dunleary. So we weren't in the same college, but at the same time, I had a kind of a safety net at the same time. So I wasn't completely like on my own moving to a completely new city, which was nice. So in terms of helping me learn to use public transport and navigate the city, that was kind of reassuring, but it would also gave me a bit more independence, in terms of they weren't like right next to me helping me all the time or stuff. So that helped me learn, say, navigation skills, but which I think have stood to me in terms of that was a stepping stone. And now coming on Erasmus, I have completely gone that next step of going to a brand new country completely by myself with no safety net, which I think if I hadn't moved to Dublin would probably been a bit more daunting and a bit more, challenging. But yeah, moving to Dublin, it was lovely because my flatmate in first year, I actually got so lucky as well, because she was involved with the Trinity Disability Services, and she's a huge advocate for people with disabilities. And she kind of helped me out as well in terms of getting in touch with the accessibility services in college, as well. So I've kind of been very lucky in terms of the people who are actually around me. I'm surrounded by all my friends, and my family and everybody are so hugely supportive, which is amazing. What I would say is everybody is hugely supportive, but what I found is, and especially coming to Canada as well, seeing Canadian society, I found that there's generally a lack of education in Irish society about how it kind of sounds bad to say how to deal with people with blindness and visual impairment, but it's how to accommodate us, I suppose. Like when I would go in places with Mossy, there would be, people who are like, oh, guide dogs can't come in here, and they're not familiar with guide dog etiquette and guide dog legislation. They wouldn't be familiar with, say, how to accommodate, say, someone who can't see. They would almost try to be helpful, but accidentally end up being condescending. So I think there's generally needs to be more education in employment amongst, say, lecturers, amongst school teachers, just in society in general. I think there needs to be more education, because when you come over to Canada, um, it just seems to be that there's people don't seem to be as uncomfortable around me and my dog, and the etiquette around that. They just seem to be a bit more used to it. It's a bit more normal. Whereas I feel like, say, when I'm walking down the street in Dublin, it's almost like a novelty to see, oh, the blind girl walking with her guide dog. Like, isn't that amazing? That there is a blind girl walking down the street with her guide dog, and people tend to, stare or comment or things. So I generally think that education is just, and like awareness raising is so hugely important, and it makes such a difference to me, and like when I'm going around, and how comfortable I would feel as well. And I also, in terms of looking forward to joining industry, the statistics that are currently out there for blind and visually impaired people joining industry. So for me, like, I'm in third year, I need to look for internships, I need to look for jobs. It's very daunting for me, to when I'm applying for jobs and things, and you see these statistics of like only 26% or something of blind and visually impaired people are actually in the labor force, which is a pretty poor statistic, in my opinion. So that's very daunting for me when I'm looking ahead. I have gotten the benefit of, in terms of, I'm in a very good position. I have I'm working towards a good degree, but at the same time, I'm a little bit terrified half the time when I'm filling in these applications, and it's, different people have said to me in the past, well, you're going to be disadvantaged when you're applying for jobs, and you're going to have to work harder and get better grades than everybody else, so that you can, basically be on an equal footing, which is incorrect. Like, industry, there are the technologies out there and everything for industry to employ us in the same way as they can employ anybody else, but it's just, again, a matter of educating them, in terms of letting them know that these technologies are out there, and it's like not any different. So it comes back again to education in the employment sector. So yeah, that's pretty much me. I think my family, my mother has definitely been one of my biggest advocates, and one of my biggest inspirations in terms of helping myself to advocate. She's involved me in every meeting regarding my visual impairment, from like medical conferences to special needs meetings, since I was in. And she first explained to me the technical terms of what was wrong with my eyes when I was about 5.5, and she's involved me ever since I was really young, which has helped me hugely to where I am now. And the support of my sisters and my friends and everybody is just amazing, in terms of helping me to get to where I am now. And yeah, thanks to all of them.
Oh, look, thank you, Sarah. You've covered some of the big issues that we're talking about in this meeting today, about inclusion, diversity, and equity. it's great to hear you talking about the support you've had and how that's enabled you to take those first steps of moving from Waterford to Dublin, and of course then moving on your own to Canada. So I think that whole aspect of people giving early support to people to enable them to get their confidence to do bigger things is certainly there. But you've also mentioned some of the great challenges for people. Awareness raising for people to be more comfortable around people who are vision impaired or blind, or people with disability generally, and how we all need to start learning about the rights of people, getting into taxis, getting into employment, all of that sort of thing. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sarah. A great overview. I'm going to move on now to Jade McCormick. Jade, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Jade. I am originally from Cork, and like Sarah, I suppose for me growing up, there wasn't unless I went to school in Dublin, there was not a lot of support for me. But my mum, I suppose my story kind of starts with her, and she would have been the biggest person to speak for me at the time. And she said, "I'm not sending my daughter to school in Dublin, it's too far." I suppose she didn't really know a lot about my condition, which is called, and forgive me if I get this wrong to anybody who hears this, it's called optiohyplasia, which is like I have some damage to my optic nerve, which means that I can only see a little bit from my left eye and light perception in my right. So growing up, my mum was, no, she's not going to school in Dublin. I want her close by. So she fought to get me into a primary school, which was, I'd say, in itself difficult. She never really said it was, because to her nothing was ever a challenge when it came to her children, and she still fights for her children to this day, even though we're all pretty much grown up. But yeah, so primary school was fun. I went to a small primary school, and I learned to read and write through sandpaper, which was very interesting. And I can still remember it, and I think my mum still has all my letters and numbers and everything. And then I sort of got assistive technology then as I went up through school, and that got better, which helped me to be more interactive with my classmates, I suppose. And then I did my junior and leaving cert with the aid of a person who would read out the papers for me, and I wrote everything myself, with the help of extra time, and of course the Aladdin CCTV, I think it's called. I still have one. So yeah, I had help with that. And then I went on to college with my guide dog, which was a huge change because I was living away from home, and trying to meet new people and having to break the boundary of, oh my god, do I talk to this one, she has a dog, like how do I approach her? So that was interesting. But I'm sure most people would know, if you have a guide dog, the dog is your conversation starter, because it's like, oh, the dog is lovely and what's her name. And so college was a totally different experience, but again, different challenges to overcome, and I was fighting for myself. I did not have my mother to speak on my behalf, which was, you kind of have to learn to grow up. I would have fought a lot for myself then, and like the whole, going into restaurants with the dog, getting in and out of taxis and all that kind of thing. Public transport was a huge one. I would have had people give out to me on the train that my bag was in the way, and it's not a bag, it's a dog, please open your eyes. And then I suppose leaving college, then I moved to Dublin. Another big step, and again more challenges, because not only was I living in my own house, but I had no family support. So all my family were down in Cork, and I was in Dublin by myself, which was, to be honest, the best decision I ever made, because you've more access to public transport. Everything is just at your doorstep, which is brilliant. But you also have bigger challenges in that you're learning how to pay your electric bill, your gas bill. How do I ask for these in braille or large print if I need them? And now thankfully everything gets emailed, so it's grand. And then move on to my biggest challenge, but best achievement, is my daughter. 2 years ago, I gave birth to my gorgeous daughter, Sive. And my pregnancy in itself was a challenge because all I kept thinking was, I can't see. How am I supposed to raise a child? But I suppose with the help of family, again, my mum was my huge sort of, you can do this. And she was the best person to help me in, I suppose, how I could make her bottles, how I could change her, feed her, get her dressed, like mum would have shown me, all that kind of stuff. And it just kind of, your natural maternal instinct kicks in and you just kind of go with it. But she's now starting play school in September, so I'm having to explain to her school and her teachers that, look, I can't see, I'm waiting on a new guide dog, but we don't want her treated any differently. We just want to make you aware that, like, I can't see and I might need some extra help in terms of sending me notes via email instead of sending them home in a school bag or posting them on a notice board. Like, just let me know if there's anything coming up. And so far they've been brilliant. And I suppose the future challenges for me will be birthday parties and her going to friends' houses. And I'm like a normal mom, I'm not ready for all that. She has to stop growing up. But like, it's all been amazing. And like, I think Sarah covered a lot of what I would have gone through in school in terms of mum having to get me a visiting teacher and applying for technologies and fighting for assistance or SNAs or anything like that. That was all a challenge for us too. But we got through it, and you know, we're out the other side, and now I have to go through it all for my daughter. So but thankfully she's fully sighted and would buy and sell you. And I really don't know if there's anything else I can say that hasn't already been said. But hopefully there might be some kind of questions.
Jade, it's Liz here. Thank you so much for that. And as well as some of the common challenges you've had with Sarah, I hear you talking about the challenge you took on of being a parent. And I love the way you've highlighted the importance of speaking up for yourself, which is what our local advocacy networks are all about telling your child's teachers that you need the information by email or whatever, being upfront about what you need. And I think that learning that kind of assertion is good for all of us, irrespective of whether we have a disability or not. But particularly important, I think, for people with a disability and in this case, a vision impairment. So, and I'm sure your child has learned and will learn so much about all those wonderful aspects of diversity and inclusion from a mother that is out there doing it, is out there living her life. So thank you very much.
She's very funny. Sorry, Liz. She's actually very funny. We took her for lunch today, and she's only 2.5. She ordered her own lunch, and then said, "Oh, mommy, there's your plate," and she put my hand on it. Like, she's already learning, and she's incredible.
That is amazing, isn't it? So that is a perfect example, isn't it? Really.
I think she shocked the waitress and everything. She was like, because I didn't obviously have my cane. I was pushing the stroller, yes. And so the waitress wasn't aware that I was blind. And when I was like, "Oh, mommy, there's your plate," she was, gobsmacked. She was like, "Oh."
And that's exactly what Sarah was saying about growing awareness of people and being more comfortable around people about what they need. So thank you so much for that, Jade. And now we're going to move on to our last speaker, Mina Fitzpatrick. Mina, would you like us to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, thanks for inviting me here to talk about myself and my life. I suppose when I thought about what I was going to say today and topics and stuff, so I kind of came up with this idea, full circle. So where I started and where I'm going to, and what I hope for the future. So, like everyone else, my mum was a massive, as they use the word now, advocate for me. I was the youngest of 8 children. I think it was a shock to her. She had me later in life, and she felt a bit that, a typical mother, oh, it's my fault that my daughter has a sight problem. But, you know, she you know, like like the other girl said, in my family, I had to do everything that my brothers and sisters had to do. There was no, and I have to say, I was a devil for trying to get away with it. Like, you know, like if I didn't want to do something, I'd say my eyes are sore, or I have a bit of a headache, or, you know, I'd be a devil for trying to get out of something. The two things, you know, when you're a child, and there's two things, you know, like I two things that I wanted to do. The first one was I wanted to be a singer and an actress. And the second one, unfortunately, was because my dad worked for Aer Lingus, I wanted to be an air hostess. And nobody would talk me out of it. I was like, we used to fly to America a bit, and you know, I'd be walking around, you know, around the plane. Like, I could see a little bit more when I was younger. My sight got progressively worse as I got older. So I was going around the plane, helping them out, taking up all the trays, handing them to the air hostesses, and you know, and I suppose that was a thing to my parent, you know, that I felt everything was possible. You know, I never felt any way different. You know, it was more people's reactions to me that made me feel different than people who knew me and loved me. I was in a school, as they would call it back then, a special school. So it was a school for visually impaired girls, St. Mary's. And I was lucky that, like, on, like, I can see exactly Jade's point, because it was, you know, a lot of girls in that school had to come from Donegal and Kerry, and only went home, you know, once every month. It was very hard on the children. You know, they were so far away from their families, and I actually used to look after them. And sometimes I lived near the school, I'd bring them home for weekends to stay with me and have sleepovers. And, you know, the good thing about it was that we got a good quality of education because everything was there. You know, you weren't fighting for the things like the other two girls had to fight in school, because it was set up for visually impaired girls. But the only problem that was there was that the teachers decided nearly, this is what you should do when you grow up. So they said to me, you know, this is what you're going to do, and that was it. But I mean, I did have a good education, and I was around visually impaired girls, and, you know, I had good fun and laughs, and did the things, you know, it was the smaller classes, but I was always in trouble in school, always. If there was trouble, it was so bad, the fact that they'd go into my class, and they'd say, someone would say, you know, Mina, keep the noise down, and someone would say, actually, miss, she's not in today. Like, I'd be blamed even if I wasn't in the school. So I left there and I went to UCD, and I studied English and history. And that was a real culture shock, because not being in an ordinary secondary school, I went from being in a class of 6 to being in a class in a massive big lecture theatre with 200 or 300 people. And I suppose I experienced my first of I used to have to go up with this giant big tape recorder thing and ask the lecturer, could I record the lecture? And I'd be falling up steps and everything. And you know, it was that there that I kind of started to feel the difference. But luckily UCD had good, they had good supports, and they brailled my books, and they had, you know, stuff on tapes, and I had, you know, the you know, everything I needed for my exams. So I left there, and then I went into I did a computer course to make myself ready for work. So for 13 years I worked in AIB, which I was when I was in the job environment, I didn't realize the way things were going to go. At the time, it was in 2001, and obviously at that time the jobs were so plentiful. Like, there was a jobs fair, and it was in that massive, the biggest part of the RDS. There was people, like, literally you could fall over a job. So I didn't realize, you know, I got a job really easily. I got my first interview, I got my first job. And it was only when I went to the work environment that I started to realize the difference, that I was different, that you know, I had to problem solve for myself. I had to figure out, you know, the work, you know, with the IT people, figure out how the systems would work with my jaws. And how, you know, I first started in telesales, and then I went on and I did HR. What I loved about my job was that I was on the other end of a phone. So no one on that phone knew that I couldn't see. So everyone that rang in, like, I was no different to anyone else. Like, one day, it was funny. This girl rang up and she was having a problem. I used to work on the payroll and HR side, so if there was something wrong with their pay or something wasn't gone in or hours didn't go in, I was the person on the phone that they rang, and you know, this something. So this girl, she got really angry with me, and I just said, you know, I'm going through my facelift here, and she says you don't understand. She says I'm totally blind. You don't know what it's like for me and whatever. And I just said, actually, I said I do. And she just stopped, and she couldn't believe it, like that she was talking to someone who was totally blind as well, because it equalized me, because and you know, that's something that I found my whole life. You know, people who know you, your friends and your family, they treat you like everyone else, so you don't feel different. It's other people, it's people that you know, that don't know you, that are judging, that are judging your disability and not you. Like, you know, I'm not, you know, the blind girl walking down the street. You know, I'm not the girl with the guide dog. I know I'm lucky to I've had three guide. I'm on my third guide dog, Pepe. He's unfortunately retiring this year. But you know, I am a person like everyone else. You know, I'm the same. You know, as this talk is about women, I'm a woman today with challenges. I just happen to have, as I often wondered, you know, why in the NCBI they say living with sight loss, and I kind of never understood it. But the other day I was talking to someone else, and to my counsellor, and we're talking about, I was talking about, I have had a lifelong battle with depression and anxiety, and my counsellor said, think of it as if, you know, I am living with anxiety and depression. And then I realised that was quite clever that they changed the living with sight loss, because that's what we are every day. We're living with it, like we're triumphing in what we do, and you know, it's a struggle, but you know, we are getting there, and we're you know, with the support of our family and our friends, and when we need at the NCBI, you know, that helps. So my mom died about 15 years ago, and there's not a day I don't miss her. But I'm so grateful for what she's done for me, and I think maybe it's because of the way she was that after I left work, and you know, I struggled to get back into the workplace. I after mom and dad died, I got seriously depressed, and I just couldn't cope with work, so I had to take time out. When I went to go back to get a job, which I thought I'd get easier, it wasn't easy. The jobs weren't there. I'd get to interviews and I'd walk in with a guide dog. And, you know, sometimes the unspoken is what you hear, and you walk in and you know, you know, I literally went out to one interview, like I literally ended up bursting into tears when I came out, because I knew they hadn't taken me seriously. One interview was so bad that I went in for this interview. He photocopied my CV, handed me the CV back, and said, "Oh, thanks for coming in." Didn't even, you know, interview me, or didn't even you know, recognize me. So what happened in the last? I was trying to think the date. It doesn't really matter the date, but the NCBI decided to start up the advocacy groups, the local ones and the countrywide ones, and they sent out, I can't remember how, I think it may have been on Facebook, that or it could have been an email, I can't remember. They were looking for people to take part in advocacy training, to advocate, you know, for themselves and for other people with vision impairments. So I said, well, why not? You know, I'll give this a go. You know, it'd be good for my confidence and getting back involved in something. So I went along up to Dublin. There was a group of us, maybe about 10 of us, and they're from countrywide, from Cork, Donegal, Sligo, a girl from Dundalk. So it was a great way. I got to meet people from all around Ireland, different, like the other two and myself that are here, you know, different life experiences. We all got together, we met each other. We had a trainer in, and she talked about advocacy and how we'd learn to advocate for people, and how we could go and, meet with different organizations like Irish Rail or with employers, and try and like that. And it's something that really needs to be done. And as Sarah said, she notices from going to Canada, how where the education of the general public is so important. And being being an advocate, it gives you a chance to meet with the different groups. Like they have groups, for meet, access groups, people that meet with Irish Rail, Busera, and people that meet with councils, all different things. So as part of that, it's kind of got me back involved and made me feel it's given me a purpose and given me a focus. So I enjoy doing my advocacy, and it helps my my confidence has gone down, with all the knockbacks for interviews, but being an advocate has definitely improved my confidence. And my last little bit, my last two bits, the thing that's been a massive part of my life, like Sarah, Sarah, was it Sarah or Shannon now? I can't remember. One of the girls had Irish dancing. I think it might have been Shannon. No, it was Sarah. Oh, anyway, it was one of you. Sorry about that. One of the girls had Irish dancing. I've had my singing, and I've done singing lessons my whole life. And next week, I did a singing exam there before Christmas, and I got my distinction. I've done a few, but next week, I'm taking part in the Feis Ceol, which is it's an All Ireland Feis. All different musical instruments, but it's singing, and it's called the Thomas More competition. It's Thomas More that wrote all these poems and songs. So I'm going to be singing in front of an audience next week for the first time in a long time. So I'm looking forward to that. And my singing makes me feel happy, and makes me feel, I enjoy doing it, and it makes me feel, good about myself, and that's important. And what I hope for my future, is to keep working with the advocacy. I'm going back to do an NCBI course to try and get back into employment. I want to try and get back into employment again, and to try and, if I don't get discovered as the next Susan Boyle in the next 10 years, that I actually have a job. So I hope to maybe work in some kind of big organization. I wouldn't mind working in disability awareness, or just something that I enjoy doing, and just get back. The last 2 years have been hard. I look forward to getting out and meet people again. That's my hope, to get out more, and to continue to be part of the advocacy groups, and to have new challenges, and to meet new people. And that's me. That's my full circle. So I'd like to thank everyone for listening to me, and thank you for inviting me here today, and happy Women's Day to everybody.
Thank you, Mina. It's Liz here. Thank you very much for sharing your own story. Some of the things I've heard you talk about today is the importance of that awareness that all our speakers here today have mentioned, about people with a disability being seen as a person first, living with the disability, that they all have some challenges in life, just like anyone else. They all have the same aspirations in life of belonging, of participating, and in achieving in different ways that they might choose. And good luck with your singing. That sounds absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
We're coming near the end of our recording today, celebrating International Women's Day. Just wondering if there's any questions that need to be asked of our speakers before we finish up for the day.
Just a few comments that I'd like to make. It was really interesting, brilliant stories from everyone, and really inspiring, all of your stories, and they're all so different, but there's so many similarities in them, which is really interesting. And one thing I that really stood out to me was all of your mothers were such strong women and strong advocates for you all, and I think that really, it goes well with the theme of today for International Women's Day. I think that's really great, that to have female role models in their lives that we can look up to. So I was also just wondering if you know you have any other female role models that kind of helped you throughout your life and your journeys and anything.
My grandmother would have definitely been a good role model for me. She taught me how to cook.
Thank you, Jade.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
Sorry, go ahead. My like I was saying before, I'm the youngest of 4 sisters. Like my 3 older sisters. So our house is an all girls house. So they would have taught me huge, like in terms of what growing up, I was always like, oh, girls, can you help me like with my outfits or different things, or going shopping, or like doing like learning how to do my makeup. Like they got me this. So for Christmas a couple of years ago, because like I would always have to memorize, say for my eyeshadow, I would always have to try and memorize. You have these big massive palettes with all these different colors and things, and I'd have to basically memorize like combinations. And so they made me this palette from like one of the makeup places, like you can pick the colors. So they made me this special palette with like all of them just go across in lines of different colors and shades and things, which is like amazing. I use it all the time, and like just different things like that. And that sounds ridiculous, like, but that it made like different things they've taught me, and just even going around Dublin and all different things. Just it's amazing, and you know they've really helped me and like growing up. So yeah, and yay for the mothers, because honestly they are so amazing and so important, and even in terms of like the importance of like the education of parents as well, you know, it's just so important.
And I'm sure Jay could acknowledge that when you are that mother, you might sound like you've been a superhero historically, but you were frightened too, you were worried too, but you still just push through it and find a way to help your child. So I think that's an important remember in advocacy, that the person doing it doesn't always feel super confident or super anything. They just have a determination to push through.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to. I mean, for now anyway, like she can't speak for herself. Well, she can, but she definitely would need a strong advocate, and I'm more than happy to be that person.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So we might wrap it up there today, ladies, and thank you so much for sharing so much about your stories in life. You've given so much information about the important things about support in people's lives, about giving them independence as well, about taking on small challenges and small steps that enables you to take the next step somewhere else, and about being and having those aspirations like anyone else, and becoming an advocate for yourself. So, and the NCBI's local advocacy networks are all about that around Ireland, about bringing people together who are blind or vision impaired to learn those skills and to support each other and to advocate for better accessibility in all areas of life. If anyone's interested in joining any of our groups, you simply need to email us on campaigns@ncbi.ie. So ladies, thank you very much, and we wish you well in all your endeavours across the world, and just keep on inspiring people the way you've inspired us today. Thank you.